Tonight on What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update, Project Management Fusion, and Positive Correlation segments. We're talking about project risk management and how you can use these strategies at work and in life. Taking risks is not for the faint of heart, but if you can properly evaluate and manage them, you can turn a blind risk into a calculated risk. On a project, properly managed risks will reduce your exposure to increased cost and delays. And in life, this can reduce your exposure to bad outcomes and increase the likelihood of good outcomes by taking opportunities you might not have otherwise. Find out more about risks on this episode of PM Update when we return, so stay tuned. Hey guys, I really enjoy making these videos for you, so if you get value from them or know someone who would, please support us by hitting like, subscribe, leaving comments, and sharing.
What the Heck Do I Know presents PM Update with Leah and Mia. And now your host, Leah.
Welcome back to PM Update. I'm Leah. In our first segment, Project Management Fusion, where we cover subjects specific to project management processes and principles, we will be talking about project risk management. Risk is everywhere, and knowing how to manage what you can identify will insulate you and your projects. In our second segment tonight, we have a positive correlation segment where we highlight stories related to project management, and we will be showing you how evaluating risks can help you be more successful in your life on things other than projects. Mia, what can you tell us about the stories in these segments? Well, Leah, in Project Management Fusion, we are briefly going through the project risk management process and then explore an actual project risk response situation with Tristan Truman, who is a risk manager at Global Arch. In the positive correlation segment, we will look at some calculated risk situations with Laura Larson, who has a unique relationship with risk as a stunt double. She attributes her success not only in work but in her life to taking calculated risks. Wow, that sounds interesting. I can't wait to hear those stories. Thanks, Mia. Now, do you know who said sense and deal with problems in their smallest state before they grow bigger and become fatal? The answer to this question and Mia's stories when we return, so stay tuned. Tristan Truman is a very careful man. As a risk manager, it is his job to advise on risk policies and processes for his company. He provides risk models on multiple types of risk and makes sure controls are in place and working properly, as well as providing research and analytical support. But just because he's careful doesn't mean that he is completely risk-averse. Tristan says managing risk is a high-stakes game, but if played right, can be a huge benefit to your project and company. He starts his process with meetings to get his company and the client together and in agreement on risk tolerances, thresholds, and policies. Once that is complete, they review the project documents to establish whether all of the high-level risks have been identified. He provides his own perspective on current market conditions, cash flow, and operational risks, and then they bring in the experts. Since Tristan works mostly on construction projects, the expert list includes personnel from engineering, architects, geotechs, permitting, and project managers, all familiar with the particular project and location. Everyone involved is responsible for providing input to any possible risk and the likelihood that they will occur, so they can be categorized and possible impacts can be established. These are then put into a matrix showing probability of occurrence and how they may affect cost, time, scope, and quality. They also use checklists from previous similar projects and diagramming techniques to identify potential causes of risk. At the end of the process, as a team, they do a SWOT analysis to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Yes, he says, even though when you think of risk, you think of bad things, opportunities are identified and tracked in the risk management plan and risk register too. The risk register itself outlines the potential responses to any of the items identified in our process. There are multiple further analysis techniques and matrices that are developed, but this is the bulk of the overall process. The last thing is to control risk by implementing the processes identified as necessary. Recently, Tristan had to address a project risk that was not adequately accounted for in his risk register. In his plans, he always recommends including contingency funds to deal with unknown site conditions. This type of thing is extremely difficult to plan for. If you know the site you're working in was previously used for, say, waste dumping, then yes, you can assume that you will be required to perform cleanup. But if it's known, then it should also be a part of the contract, and an evaluation on depth and breadth of the cleanup should be estimated and a value put to that work. In this situation, the unknown site condition was a possible archaeological significant find. A government official stopped all work on the site until an evaluation of the significance of the find could be completed by the local university. Since the university was understaffed at the time, they originally estimated 6 weeks before they could get to the site and extract enough artifacts to do the evaluation. Tristan advised his company and the client of the estimated timeline for resolving this, and then called a meeting to go over their options. A 6-week stop work would cascade into other delays due to weather and availability of labor and materials. And really, the entire project was in jeopardy until they got the evaluation from the university. So Tristan made a proposal to speed up the entire process. The client and company agreed. Tristan got all of the stakeholders in the same room again and explained their need for urgency in this situation. The professor said that he was unable to assemble the staff he would need to evaluate the site and extract and evaluate the items found. When pressed as to why, he admitted that since it was summer, most of the grad students were either gone or on half-time on research projects. When Tristan asked if those still in town or on half-time could be brought to full-time, the professor said it was technically possible, but he did not have the budget for it. Tristan explained that they had a contingency budget for unforeseen conditions that was approved for use for speeding up the university evaluation. It was not enough to cover a 6-week shutdown, but if the professor could arrange for the grad students to finish the work in 2 weeks, they would release the funds to the university to cover their costs. The professor made some calls and was able to get enough grad students to return for the 2 weeks. And in the end, the find was not historically significant after all, so they were allowed to return to work. Now, if the artifacts had turned out to be historically significant, they could have put plans in place to either cancel the project altogether or come to an agreement with their client about how to resolve much sooner than they would have otherwise. They were lucky that the professor was able to get enough staff back to do all the work, but there was nothing lucky about having the contingency funds to cover the necessary expenses. That was pure risk mitigation strategy. Thanks, Mia. That is a great example of risk management. My hat is off to Tristan for thinking fast and coming up with a solution that worked for everyone. Risks really are everywhere, and if you won't be able to avoid them all, but if you are smart about how you plan, you can usually at least reduce the impact they have. And now the answer to our quote question from the top of the show. Do you know who said, "Sense and deal with problems in their smallest state before they grow bigger and become fatal"? That was Pearl Zhu. In the second half of our show, we will hear about risk from a completely different type of risk professional and how she deals with risk in her life. She's a stunt double and an adventurer, which might make her sound like the kind of person that enjoys danger and risk, but that is actually not the case. And for our second quote question of the night, do you know who said, "He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life"? The answer to this question and our positive correlation story when we return, so please stay tuned. Laura says that you have to take risks to succeed in life. If it was easy and it wasn't a risk, then everyone would already be doing it and you wouldn't be doing anything special. From the time you take your first steps when you're learning how to do something you have never done before, you are also learning to calculate and somewhat control your odds of a good outcome.
Laura says that in her work as a stunt double, every time she performs, there are multiple analysis, experts, and calculations done to make sure the stunt is done correctly and safely. Is it 100%? No, but it's really close. And nothing in life is guaranteed anyway. She recalls that even as a kid, she was always one to push herself past her limits. She liked to climb really tall trees, and doing this built up her upper body strength, so she was the only girl that could make it to the top of the rope in gym class. Often she tried to do things that were past her limits, so she would work at them until she got better, or just decided that wasn't for her. The thing that put her risk-taking into focus for her was a TV show she saw as a teenager. It was the Tapestry episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where Captain Picard is given the opportunity to go back in time to correct a mistake from his past to avoid death in the present. When he returns to the present, his life is very different, and he learns that it is because he never had a brush with death, he never learned how to take calculated risks, stand out in a crowd, or get noticed in his career. One of the other characters points out that he has always had lofty goals, but was never willing to do what it took to obtain them. Laura decided in that moment that would not be her path. You never know what you are capable of until you try, so she tried just about everything. Mixed martial arts was one of her favorite things. It made her feel strong and powerful, and she found that getting hit in the face isn't as bad as you think it's going to be, and that she would live through it. After the first time it happened, she wasn't afraid of it anymore. Laura didn't just jump blindly into the new activities, though. She used the project management process of initiation and planning to start, learning as much as she could about what she wanted to do and planning out how she would need to start out at first and how much effort it would take in order to progress. For execution and monitoring and control, she set realistic goals for herself so she was able to reach most of them. Every time she tried something new and succeeded, or worked at it until she got better, it gave her more confidence to try even more new things. If she wasn't good at it or didn't get better, she decided it wasn't for her and moved on to something else. No one is good at everything the first time, and being able to put in the effort to see if you can is part of the fun, and necessary for being successful at whatever it is you're trying to do. Laura isn't afraid of failure, mostly because she doesn't think she has actually failed at anything. There are many things that she has tried and not mastered, but to her, that isn't failure. It's just something else on her list that she has tried and gotten to the point where more effort is not going to yield much greater results. Not much gets in her way of trying something new that she's interested in doing or learning about. When she decided to work towards being a stunt double, she knew that she wanted to be in movies, but didn't want to be a celebrity, and this seemed like a good way to achieve that goal, given her opinion of risk. Once she decided that, she started training to be the best stunt double that she could. It took years of training and learning this new craft, but eventually she got there and is one of the best in the business. Laura says that you don't have to be a stunt double type of risk taker to get the rewards you are looking for. You just have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone and try any new thing that maybe scares you a little bit. Once you get used to it, taking calculated risks will get easier. Jumping blindly into a new area isn't a calculated risk and can be dangerous depending on what you're doing. She recommends doing a lot of research, figuring out your own path for the truly unique things, and setting yourself up for success instead of failure. Doing the research will allow you to predict reasonable results and achieve your goals most of the time.
Risk takers aren't just successful stunt doubles. They are outside-the-box thinkers that can take creative approaches to problems in just about any environment. In order to achieve great things, you have to be willing to take risks and do things that other companies aren't doing. Before you start, though, you need to know the environment you're working in and have some idea of how it will turn out. Sometimes you will be successful and sometimes you won't. And if not, you need to be able to try again and not be overwhelmed by not getting the initial success that you had hoped for. These are not failures, just things that haven't worked out yet, or things that will lead you to the next thing that will. Risk takers are naturally high-level achievers because they try so often. The consistency of their efforts means that on average, they're more successful more often, and to a higher level than someone who doesn't try many new things at all. That is so true. How does that saying go? You miss 100% of the chances you didn't take? Well, today we learned the mechanics of putting together a risk management plan and how one company responded to a completely unknown risk and still managed to mitigate it within their management response framework. And then we learned how taking risk can help you be successful, like Laura. How do you feel about risk? If you aren't a risk taker by nature but want to give it a try, start with small things. Do your research, make a plan, set reasonable goals, and be realistic about what the outcome is likely to be. Then get started. The more you try it, the better you will get at it, and the less scary it will be for you as you go forward. Now for the answer to our second quote question of the day. Do you know who said, "He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life"? That was Muhammad Ali. That's all for What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update with Leah and Mia and our Project Management Fusion and Positive Correlation segments for this week. Thank you for watching and see you next time on our next episode of PM Update. Good night. Don't forget to support these videos by hitting like and subscribe. I love seeing comments too.